How's it going, everybody? Gonna address the elephant in the room. Spencer's here. We're in Utah. This is our first actual video together. I'm super excited for this. It's a little weird. I feel like I could touch him, but I don't want to.
You can touch me if you want
I'm
to.
just gonna...
Oh.
And close. That out of the way, I'm excited. We're gonna start this off with our first video together doing the best of 2016, which by definition is the best, our favorite of 2016. It's by no means the top critically acclaimed or anything like that. If you want the top critically acclaimed, go check out Rotten Tomatoes and sort it by rating. To start us off, I'm Ryan, and I am a Cinemaholic.
Spencer, and I am a Cinemaholic as well.
So, like I said, we're gonna just hop into it. We've got some honorable mentions, and then we're gonna jump right into it. We'll go 10, 9, 8, 7 till we unveil the number one of the year. So, do you want to start us off with some honorable mentions?
Yeah, just to preface my honorable mentions, I just want to say that taking each of these 5 movies off my list, it was like taking a piece of my soul off with it. I'm sure Ryan feels the same way. We were kind of talking a little bit, and we both agree that 2016, while it had rough patches, it was overall a pretty great year for movies. That being said, honorable mentions, The Wailing, which is a South Korean horror movie I really liked. It's almost kind of an epic. I'll be talking about that on my next watch list, excuse me. Sing Street, Everybody Wants Some, Green Room, and 10 Cloverfield Lane. So, Ryan, what are your honorable mentions?
I've got some that are the same. Like you said, I'll echo it now and then forget about it later because I would literally say this about everyone. It was literally a battle to decide where these were going to place. I had to take everything from the year and I compressed it into a pile that was the good movies of 2016 and then painstakingly chop it away and order it. So these are the ones that barely missed the list. The Edge of 17, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, The Witch, Everybody Wants Some, Nocturnal Animals, and 10 Cloverfield Lane. So do you want to hop right into 10, or do you have anything about either of our honorable mentions?
I'll just hop right into my number 10, which is The Hunt for the Wilder People. It's directed by Taika Waititi. He's doing the new Thor movie, Thor Ragnarok, and this is just like the closest thing to compare this to would be like a Pixar movie. It's kind of like a live action version of Up in lots of ways. And the kid who plays Ricky Baker, I don't know his name right now, I'm sorry, I should have done research before this. He is excellent in this movie, he's hilarious, and Sam Elliott gives a great performance in the movie. It was heartwarming, it was funny. I actually saw this movie with my mom, and we both really wound up enjoying this one. So what will your number 10 be, Ryan?
It's the same thing. The Hunt for the Wilder People. I really did. I echo everything you said. It was such a fun movie, and I think that's when I was deciding what would make it and what not. That was the thing that stood out the most. It was just such an enjoyable experience watching. I agree. Ricky Baker was so funny, and that's the thing that. How do you say his first name? Taika. He's such a good comedic director. He really is good with pacing and nailing those comedic moments, which he was able to convey throughout the whole movie in every aspect, whether it was the sound or the acting or just the editing. It was such a great movie. So.
Indeed. My number 9 is going to be The Witch, which is directed by David Robert Eggers. It's a New England folk tale is what it was called. It premiered at Sundance in 2015. David Robert Eggers took home the award for Best Director, and it shows when you watch the movie. This is one that I went back and actually rewatched. My theater experience wasn't too great just because of a ton of inconsiderate people in my audience. And watching it at home on my laptop with headphones was like way better. It was the way to experience the movie actually, and has great performances across the board, including from some children, which is a really difficult thing to pull off. Do you have any thoughts on The Witch at all? I know it was an honorable mention for you.
Yeah, it was great. The thing that makes The Witch great is the tone. It's not a jump scare, which is unfortunately where everything's been going. It's so rare to get a movie like this that is so subtle but distraught and disgusting. It was just so well made, and like you said, so he got the directing for a reason. I mean, it's just overall very well rounded. My number 9 is another Sundance movie, Swiss Army Man, which I as well. Maybe that's the thing that directed my list, is just well-rounded movie. Very, very good comedic timing. It's directed by the Daniels, starring Daniel Radcliffe and Paul Dano. I've loved Paul Dano. Everything that he's done. Love and Mercy that he was in last year was so good. He's just a great actor. And Daniel Radcliffe, it was nice seeing him doing something different. I think he's really tackled that after Harry Potter, of hopping down genre. Such a great original movie, which is exactly what they wanted to do from the get-go.
All right, moving on to my number 8. My number 8 is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This movie, I actually wound up enjoying this more than Episode 7, and I just think across the board, the new cast of characters they introduced, kind of like their plan that they have throughout the movie and that they execute in the third act, was so much fun. And the third act wound up just giving me everything basically I've ever wanted in a Star Wars movie. I had so much fun with this movie, as well as kind of found myself moved by it as well, which was something that really surprised me and I didn't expect walking into the movie. I didn't have too high of hopes for it just because of how Gareth Edwards did Godzilla, but I think he really successfully pulled this off. It looks great. It's probably the best shot Star Wars movie I've seen, and Star Wars Rogue One, I love it so much.
Speaking of like well shot movies, my number 8 is Hell or High Water, which there's several high points about this movie. No pun intended. It was the highlights are the cinematography, the acting, and the script, which Taylor Sheridan has blown it out of the water every single time. So I don't know why I wasn't expecting that going into this movie, but I didn't have high expectations going into it. So it was a really nice, refreshing experience to be able to go and see this very well-toned, well-developed, well-acted movie. And I appreciate the cinematography because of how subtle it was. It just felt like a Western. And it wasn't necessarily like some that we'll maybe talk about later, specifically on my list, that, like we were talking about earlier, the Neon Demon. It's a beautiful shot movie, but that's what it's trying to do. And so I think this very, very well aided the story, the way that it was shot and the way that the story was told through that. So Hell or High Water, my number 8.
My number 7 is going to be Nocturnal Animals, which is the second film by Tom Ford, which is really kind of crazy how well done this movie is. This is another one that I watched twice, and on the second viewing, the experience was so much more enriching. I really, really love this movie. I think the performances are great. The performance actually that really surprised me the second time, I didn't really notice how good it was the first time, was actually Jake Gyllenhaal gives a great performance in Nocturnal Animals. And but the standout to me is Michael Shannon. I think Michael Shannon not only brings to life one of the best characters of 2016, I also think he gives one of the best performances of 2016. And I think it's a shame he hasn't been recognized enough for it. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson was good in Nocturnal Animals, and he gets under your skin. But Michael Shannon's performance is just so much more of a powerhouse performance, in my opinion. But overall, the structure, the screenplay, the direction, and the execution of the movie are all really, really well done. So, number 7, Nocturnal Animals.
My number 7 is going to be Deadpool, which I was so excited for. That's the difference between my 7 and my 8 was Hell or High Water. I didn't really have high expectations going into it. But Deadpool, just the marketing. It's probably the best marketed movie ever. The marketing for this was pure genius and gold. So it's awesome that I was able to go into the movies and experience this movie, and that it was able to meet and exceed those expectations. This is one that, as well as one that's higher on my list, that I could just pop on any time. And this is kind of one of those movies that I not necessarily would fall asleep to, but could just put it on and just let it play in the background. It's so just fun and witty and so meta. And I think that's the thing that stood out. It's such a different comic book movie, which is what made it so good, because we've got so many coming out these days. They're doing good at keeping it fresh, but at the same time, sometimes they hit the same beats and it's the same kind of movie. So it was so nice to be able to have this change of pace with Deadpool. So that's why it's making number 7 on my list.
Real quickly, I just want to add, Deadpool was a movie I really, really enjoyed. It didn't make my list, but I thought it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that it was as successful as it was. I think it's much better than it had any right to be. Personally, I did not expect it to be good, and it actually really surprised me how good that one was. My number 6 is going to be Hell or High Water. Ryan just talked about this movie, and this is, like he said, it was a huge surprise. It was one I had heard literally nothing about. I saw the poster before I walked in, so I knew the cast, and I like every member of the cast, and I think all of them really are basically at the top of their game. Jeff Bridges is good as always, and he's about as good as he's ever been in this movie. Chris Pine is the best he's ever been, and Ben Foster is just like continuing his streak of awesomeness. He's good in basically anything he's in. One thing I really liked about this movie was that the antagonists, in a way, are protagonists of the story. They're just, and it shows the difference in like those viewpoints, and it kind of makes it an interesting viewing experience for the audience member, because you're saying, well, I agree with what this person's saying, but this person, sees it like this way or whatever, and it's kind of like the you've seen all these things happen in movies before, like the cop chasing the robbers, but we've never seen it executed quite like Hell or High Water does it. And so for that reason alone, I just had to mention it. It's also just super, super entertaining, has a great script, and overall well done movie. Hell or High Water.
One thing that I did want to touch on with that I didn't, was Chris Pine. I hadn't seen a lot of movies that he was in, so it was such a refreshing change from the normal comedic thing that the entity that I always assumed Chris Pine was. But that and Z for Zachariah, such good movies with him in it. My number 6 is going to be Arrival, which this one as well had a lot of hype going into it, and it was critically acclaimed very early on, and I'm so glad that it was able to hold up that for me, that the experience was. This is one that I wasn't able to catch right off the bat. I saw it like 2 or 3 days late, which is, what does that even mean? I mean, I was still opening weekend, but I was so nervous I had to get out the first chance I could to see this because I was so scared of spoilers. But overall, Denis Villeneuve, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
He's on par. All of his movies have been great, and the cinematographer in this, I hadn't even heard of him or seen any of his other work. This guy's going to be like Oscar talk. This movie was so beautiful, and the overarching story elements and how that's visually conveyed is so phenomenal. Really enjoyed the movie as a whole, and it is one that I was able to go see time and time again, I think 3 times in the theater, and it paid off every time. Unlike some other movies that I considered putting on my list that had like twists or big spoilers or whatnot at the end, each viewing experience for this one added a different layer to it. It never contradicted itself, which is something to really be, applauded, that they're able to do that and keep it under wraps for so long. So that's coming in on my number 6 is Arrival.
My number 5 is going to be Moonlight. Moonlight is a movie that completely blew me away on every single level that it possibly could. On every single front, I think that this movie is basically perfectly made and acted and shot, and the music was gorgeous in it. I just really found this movie very affecting. I feel like it's a good movie for the times right now, and I think it's a movie that everybody should see. And the thing that's really cool about it is it's something that I don't really personally relate to, because I mean, I'm a straight white guy, but at the same time, I do relate to, and I think the message is universal, because it's a movie about finding your identity and who you are, and I think that applies to everybody and can apply to everybody, and especially the way it kind of empathetically gives its audience its message, I found to be extremely affecting. Moonlight is one of the best films of 2016. Any love this gets at any award shows, I think it wholeheartedly deserves. So 5 is Moonlight.
My 5 is actually Moonlight as well, so I'm just going to ride the train and echo everything that you just said, because it really is a masterpiece. And this is another one that I hadn't really heard of the director before, but it was so powerful, and I really enjoyed the structure of this one, how it was split into 3 acts. Most movies are split into 3 acts, but the length of the acts was pretty much divided up evenly into thirds, which is uncommon. You usually get a short first act and then a long second act and a short third, but this was capturing 3 different times in this person's life, and you get to see his development as a character, and it's such a beautiful arc. It reminded me a lot of Boyhood, which is such a great movie as well. But like you, I came out of it, and my initial reaction was that I couldn't really relate to it, because I'm a white straight guy as well. But it's exactly like you said. As you think about it, you can connect, and the life lessons that you can pull from this movie are phenomenal. And this is definitely one that it's not going to be seen by as many people as it should be seen. So I would definitely say, out of a lot of these ones that I'm talking about, this one is just such a rare insight into life. I would definitely suggest Moonlight.
My number 4 is going to be Martin Scorsese's Silence. This is probably the most recent one on my top 10 list that I've seen, and this is just, a movie that blew me away, just like everything that Martin Scorsese does is. So this is probably the least surprising one to see on my list, just from a perspective of, if I were to go back in a time machine to the beginning of 2016 and say, what do you think your top 10 list is going to be of this year, then I would have for sure said Martin Scorsese's Silence would be on that list. It's just a movie that is exquisitely well made. It's very well shot, very well acted. Just everything comes together really well, and the pacing and the execution of the story I found to be fascinating. I found the time period that they were covering to be extremely interesting. I was engaged the entire time, despite the fact that it's a 2-hour and 40-minute movie. So what would your number 4 be, Ryan?
My 4 is going to be The Lobster. This movie was so weird and so good. This is one as well that I saw at Sundance, and I was blown away by. And then I kind of put it back on the shelf, and I saw it again in theaters, and it wasn't as good for some reason. I think it probably was the environment I was in and the people that were surrounding me in the theater. It was a less enjoyable experience. But then I bought it on Blu-ray, and I gave it another watch. And the experience that I had the first time came rushing back, and there was no way that I couldn't include this movie on my list. It highlights a lot of aspects of love and relationships and life in a very unique way, and it's able to take a dark comedy approach to that in a very original and unique way that I really appreciated. The messages that it's able to bring across in such a different way was striking to me. The acting is definitely not talked about enough in this movie. It's a very dry movie, so I feel like a lot of the times when people talk about it, they may even say that they didn't enjoy the acting, but I think that's just that not really understanding. I mean, it takes a certain level of actor to be able to accomplish what they were able to do. So all around, it's a great movie, but I think the acting, Colin Farrell, oh my gosh, was just fantastic. Definitely one as well that I would suggest, but it is dark and it goes to some weird places, so it may not be for everyone, but in my list, it's definitely top 5 material.
All right, guys, I real quickly just want to say my number 3 and my number 2 were just like, they were changing constantly. So I'm going to say, get it out of the way. My number 3 is Manchester by the Sea, directed by Kenneth Lonergan. This is, as I said, one of my favorite movies of all time when it came out. All 3 of my top 3s are some of my favorite movies of all time, which is just nuts that 3 of like what I would consider to be in the best movies of all time came out in 2016. But Casey Affleck gives the best performance of 2016 in my opinion. It's a movie that completely, it's perfectly executed, it's perfectly directed, and that's really, with Affleck's performance, the standout of this movie is the direction, just because of when and how he decides to show us things in that movie is just so geniusly well done, and the simplicity of the narrative is just so powerful and so moving. It feels so true to life, and it's just a movie that I loved with every fiber of my being. So Manchester by the Sea.
My number 3 is your number 4, Silence. This is one that I had my list done because 2016 was over, but then we had to catch some of these that were eking out into the 2017 year, and it devastated me because I had to go and I had to remake my whole list, but it definitely deserves a place in the top 5. It's a masterpiece, and this is definitely one that I would suggest anyone interested in storytelling, specifically filmmaking in general, should watch. It's one that you can take so many levels from and learn about the craft of storytelling. Scorsese, it's top 3 all time of his. I mean, it's just such a beautiful film, and the acting is, I don't know where this movie is in the award circuit because it's not popping
Silence.
up. What the heck? But I mean, the acting is award worthy, the cinematography is award worthy, the editing, the script. This is a award caliber film, which I don't know, maybe it will pop up in the Oscars. It's escaped all the other awards, but it's definitely one that deserves it.
My theory is it probably was the marketing, but I guess we can save that for another time. My number 2, you ready for this, is La La Land. And I know, I just broke Ryan's heart. It's Damien Chazelle's movie, which, director of Whiplash, probably my second favorite movie of 2014, so he's come in second place again, but let me, when I get to my number 1, you'll understand why. La La Land is a movie that just completely blew me away on every single level. I had heard great things before I went in, so I kind of like put on a more critical eye, admittedly, and by the first 3 minutes, I think I'd given up and just said, okay, this movie's excellent. It's basically flawless, and the chemistry between Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, and just kind of like the overall message of the movie, I found extremely inspiring. I love La La Land. It has probably several of the best scenes of 2016. Like, in fact, a compilation of the best scenes of 2016 would probably just specifically be scenes from La La Land, and I think that it's an incredible achievement. And the fact that they were able to kind of capture the feeling of those old musical Technicolor movies, but at the same time have it be set in modern times, I think is just genius and fantastic. So what will your number 2
I'm
be?
crying over here. I don't know if I can even. Man, that's heartbreaking. My number 2 is also heartbreaking. It's Manchester by the Sea. This movie wrecked me. It's such a subtle movie, which I really appreciated. It's Lonergan. He was originally a playwright, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to. There is obviously a distinction between playwright and screenwrite, but he was able to make a transition that is completely seamless and take the best of both worlds and give us a masterpiece, which is Manchester by the Sea, which is in my top 10 all-time favorite movies. And I think you walk away and that's all that you can say. It was such a beautiful blend of a portrayal of emotion as well as a real life experience. I walked out of this feeling like I was a fly on the wall, which I haven't had that experience for quite some time, and it was a very unique experience to be able to have, and it's a very reflective movie. I agree. Casey Affleck totally knocks it out of the park. Best performance of 2016, hands down. And it's one that my top three. I mean, my number one it was pretty obvious, but my number 2 and 3, they were back and forth, and Manchester did end up pulling ahead just by a hair. Let's get into your number 1. I have no idea what it's going to be.
You have no idea? I thought it was to be obvious. My number 1 is Arrival, Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. And I'm going to explain real quickly why. Because when I was going through the movies of 2016, La La Land was on top of the list for a long time. But then I came across Arrival again, and I would start to think about it. And I have seen the movie twice. And the reason why I put it as my number 10 is because it is a studio blockbuster. It's a studio film that was released in 2016 that has more on its mind than explosions. And not only that, the concepts and the cinematography and the music and the performances in this movie are all flawless. I think this will go down as one of the best science fiction movies ever made. When we did our review of it, I actually called it the 2001 A Space Odyssey of our generation, and I totally stand by that. It's a movie that completely, I think anybody who sees it will be moved by it. And it's a movie about working together, coming together as a world and working together, and not almost passing judgment on things that might be a little bit outside of our understanding, which I think the message, as I said, is super, super relevant to today's times. So that is why Arrival is my number 1, even over La La Land, which, trust me, it broke my heart to do that, about as much as the ending of La La Land did. So, Ryan, what is your number 1? I have no idea what it could be.
Speaking about La La Land, it's just a revolutionary movie. I think this is going to go down as in 70 years, people will look back and think of it as a classic as compared to the classics that it was paying homage to. It's revolutionary in its filmmaking because it is able to timelessly blend generations of the previous generation, paying homage to that while introducing relevant topics in the world now with society, and be able to blend those so perfectly in a movie that has been so well received across the board, which was so surprising and heartwarming for me that so many people have liked this. It's an objectively brilliant movie, but I think people are just turned off by the idea of musical. So I'm so glad that people have been able to go out and experience this, because it is an experience that needs to be had, specifically in the theater. I loved that it was shot on film. It was so beautiful. The colors, which is another homage to the classics. And I could go on 4 hours on this. I've thought about it a lot. It's been over a month and a half. I've seen this movie in the theaters 10 times all the way through. And I'm ready in this episode to declare this as my favorite movie of all time. It goes down, it will go down, and I can't in the foreseeable future see anything knocking it out of its place. It's so brilliant.
I just briefly want to piggyback off that and say something real quick. I've recommended this movie to several people, and several of those people have come back and told me that La La Land is now their favorite movie of all time. So he's not alone in thinking in really fast. Oh well, we can edit it. Okay, but
do you want to? You start with Alone. You say Alone, and then I'll just kind of piggyback into something else.
I'll just start that whole part over again. One more thing that I just want to mention, piggyback off Ryan's comment about La La Land being his favorite movie of all time. I've recommended this movie to several people. I've seen this movie with several people, and some of those people have come back and told me that La La Land is their new favorite movie of all time. And yeah, it's up there with mine as well. I'd say the only musical that I like better than La La Land is probably The Wizard of Oz, and that's a probably. And it's crazy that a musical released nowadays, especially with things. I think the last big musical I saw was Les Miserables, and that one was nothing compared to like something like The Wizard of Oz. So the fact that we have a movie that came out in 2016 that like so respectfully pays homage to movies like Singing in the Rain or, you know, those classic musicals of the Technicolor era, and at the same time can be its own thing, is just amazing, I think.
And that's the brilliant thing. This is our best of 2016 movie and our episode. And it's all a personal thing. That's why we go watch movies, is because we go and we have these experiences. Film is definitely something to be experienced. You have these things that touch you on a deep level and can change the direction of your life. And that's, we came together because we're both film nerds and we wanted to make this channel, and we just started talking about it. But it has the potential to be so much more than that, because film can really pull people together. So this, as a whole, is our best of 2016 list, but we'd also like to hear your best of 2016 list. So please, down in the comments, let us know, what are your favorite movies of 2016, because that's the awesome thing about being able to do this, is to start conversations. And my best was different than his best, so it's definitely not, it's a subjective thing, which is film.
Yep. So guys, make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you want, and yeah, comment, tell us your top 10 lists. We're really curious to hear what you guys have to say, and tell us what you think of our top 10 list. Tell us if there's any picks you agree explicitly or explicitly disagree with. And yeah, stay tuned for some awesome Sundance coverage starting tomorrow. We are seeing Colossal and an Inconvenient sequel tomorrow. I believe that's it at Sundance, right?
Yep, that's it. And then we also saw, what was that movie we just saw?
We saw Split, the new M. Night Shyamalan.
So we're actually going to record that review right after this, but it'll be uploaded later in the day. We're excited for that one. It's a good way, spoiler alert, to start off 2016 or 2017, whatever year we're in now. I hate that the end of the year and the beginning of the year blend because of release dates. Whatever. Thank you for watching. Follow me at Rye_Gordon on Twitter and Instagram.
You can follow me on Twitter at SpinnyHand. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye. I think that's like how we have to end the video.